What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Mean Enough Podcast. I am Andres.
This is RB3.
I'm Sabrina.
And this is our podcast where we talk about your favorite directors and the deeper meaning within their films. This episode is very special because we are talking about the great Gina Prince-Bythewood. She has a few films in her filmography, but all great films that we want to discuss, especially her beginning, where she started with Love and Basketball. She also has Beyond the Lights and The Old Guard on Netflix, which is her major big budget movie. But I want to get a quick little brief introduction as far as how you guys were introduced to her work. I'll start with you, Sabrina.
Yeah, I got introduced by her work. I watched Love and Basketball back sometime in like high school from a recommendation from one of my friends. So it was the first time I had seen it. And then I actually revisited it for this episode. And I was really excited to do so because obviously, you know, it's February. We're talking about Valentine's Day. We're on that romance. And this is just like a classic tale of two people who love the same thing and also love each other. So I just feel like it was super fitting. And yes, that was kind of my introduction.
How about you, Ep3?
Well, for me, Love and Basketball is quite literally my mom's favorite movie of all time. And it's probably not even close. I have that movie drilled into my memory so deep because my mom watched it so many times when I was younger. And if I ask my mom coming here right now, I'll tell you, she'll confess that is probably her favorite movie of all time. So, that's how I'm most familiar with her work. And having that introduction, like, really got me a good understanding of like her sensibilities as a storyteller. She graduated from UCLA Film School back in like 1991 and started like writing on like network TV and all that kind of stuff. So like, you know, and before transitioning to directing, so you can kind of tell in her style that it's very centered on the writing, the dialogue. It's very centered on the characterization and the emotions as opposed to being big and over the top and electric and stuff like that. So I think that's something that you could see throughout her films. And I think that's something that made Love and Basketball so special. That's why when it came out, it premiered at the 2000s Sundance Film Festival and was nominated for, and she actually won the Independent Spirit Award for Best First Feature for it. So
it's crazy because Spike Lee was a producer on that film, right?
Yeah. So
absolutely. he was behind her since day one because she hadn't produced a feature film yet, created a feature film yet. So props to Spike Lee for scouting that talent that is Gina Prince-Bythewood, because it is a very significant movie. If you just, how do I say this? If you just make it Love and Basketball, I really do feel like that's a significant enough movie to create an entire career, which in a way it has. Obviously, she's making this kind of comeback into major big blockbuster films with The Old Guard, but I feel like Love and Basketball, like you said, RB3, it's a lot of people's favorite movies. It's a classic now. It came out in the year 2000. It's what a lot of people consider to be a great blend of so many different themes and stories inside of it, and it's such a personal film to her because she based the character of Monica slightly off her because of her obsession with basketball and how she wanted to make it in the NBA, in the WNBA or the NBA, and how she was so obsessed with the sport and how she viewed it to the point that she almost considered casting herself in the role. But eventually she wanted to get a basketball player to play the part. I think her first one was Anisha Butler was her first choice.
Oh, I wonder if any relation.
I know, RB3, you never know. And then eventually she got the actress who plays Monica now, which I'm pulling up her name.
Sanaa Lathan.
There you go, Sanaa Lathan, who had to learn how to play basketball in order to get the role. And when she talks about getting the role, she talks about how Gina kind of put her through the ringer, literally, physically, as far as transforming her body to fit the part of playing this all-time WNBA basketball player. How do you feel about the personal touches in this film, Sabrina? Like, can you really tell that it's made from a personal point of view?
100%. I mean, the way she handles all the different ideas and thematic elements, and I know we're going to get into all of that, but just that love of the sport. I mean, it's so intense. As somebody who doesn't really watch a lot of sports, doesn't like basketball, I know you guys are the exact opposite.
I know, as I'm drinking off my
and the shirt.
Literally just rocking my NBA look.
This is too much. I've seen one basketball game. It's when I went to go see the Clippers a few years ago with some friends who were visiting Los Angeles. So I'm not super aware of the sport, but she really made it genuinely intense and she put us into that perspective. And I think that's her love for the sport just shining through. And just the way basketball genuinely is like interwoven all throughout this film when we deal with family issues, when we deal with relationship issues. It's like first and foremost at the center of everything. And it works so well. And that has to be handled by somebody who's crafting that in a specific way and has their passion in it.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass it to you, RB3, in a sec, but I want to go off what you're saying, Sabrina, mainly because I'm obsessed with this sport to a point that it's not even funny. Like I just constantly read articles and listen to podcasts and keep up with numbers and games and stats and all that. It's the best way to put it to someone who's not really into the sport, like maybe like you, Sabrina. I really do feel, and I think RB3 will back me up here. This is the most mentally. It's like playing a game of chess with your mind and with your body, because it's that level of like one-on-one mentality as far as how you view the game on a mental way, but it's also mental in the sense of, because it's a shot and because everything is based on stats as far as 50% from the field or whatever, all those numbers are based off what you think you can do. So if I'm taking a shot and I think in my head for a brief second, oh, it's probably gonna miss because I think I messed it up or something like that. Any kind of doubt in your mind, you're gonna miss. So it's one of those sports where you have to be so confident to the point that your belief in yourself is kind of driving you, and at the same time have to deal with your teammates. Like if you see The Last Dance, it basically Michael Jordan breaks it down how it's the most mentally taxing, physically taxing sport in the world, in my opinion. I love the sport of basketball, and I love how she presents it in this movie as well. RB3.
Yeah, and I think I think a representation of basketball is really something is interesting, especially like that lifelong desire and that chase for it, right? And I think that's something that could be personal for from a basketball perspective, that she was coming from. But I think in a lot of ways it could reflect that filmmaking perspective too, especially when it's an industry that is predominantly male driven, where there's not really much of a lane for women to go into, especially when you look at this time. This was even pre WNBA time. So WNBA wasn't established until
96.
96. Yeah. So by the time she was leaving college, or by the time Monica was leaving college in this film, there wasn't even that opportunity. You really only had two choices to either play college ball and, just finish your career there, or you go overseas. And that's ultimately the choice that comes out here. So, and on top of that, it's kind of, I think that's kind of like the genius part of this movie, because, there's always that trope in like romance movies, like that choice to like go overseas and take that career opportunity and stuff like that. But in this case, it's actually like related to a lifelong passion that she has. So it's like the question of passion versus romance, and where is that bridge and comes in between. So it's a really good like central conflict that kind of derives from that. But yeah, I think, having that drive and that ambition definitely ends up tapering and tampering other relationships you have in your life too. And I think that's something that they also explore brilliantly as well.
Yeah, I want to I want to toss that question to you, Sabrina. The idea of how basketball in this movie can literally be any other kind of industry that doesn't have a lot of women. Like RB3 said, the WNBA wasn't established till 96. So the entire time she is going into a field that is literally only dominated by men. And if she's going to go into the field, she has to go overseas, because Americans don't view women basketball players on the same level at all. And they still don't, if I'm being honest. If you keep up with the WNBA at all or NBA at all, you'll see how much they're basically clawing and scratching their way just to survive this league that has been established since 96. But the way that the story talks about this, basically a feminist angle of like, I'm going to be able to do this and be a pioneer in my field, because that's my mentality, and I feel like I can do this regardless of my gender.
100%. I mean, when we're introduced to these two characters, when we're introduced to Quincy and Monica as children, she already has this mentality at such a young age where she knows that if she wants to continue being in like this angle with sports, like playing basketball for the rest of her life, she has to work 10 times harder than everybody else around her, basically, to be respected. And we see that when she's a kid, and then we see that as she's growing up as well. And that's where it goes to what RB3 said about ambition. You know, when you're getting pushed back so many different times and you're not getting the same opportunities as somebody who's a different gender in a sport. I had no idea that the WNBA wasn't a thing until 96. That is a travesty. Also, it's still a travesty to this day to hear about how underpaid female athletes are versus their male counterparts. It's
WNBA
something that is,
specifically.
yeah, and it's something that is so crazy because they're putting in the exact same amount of time, effort, probably even more in most cases. And that's shown really brilliantly through Monica's ambition, through how hard she works, and that ultimate like decision that she makes when she's in college, where she's not going to skip out on a game to be there for him. Unfortunately, that's a very tough choice, because if you work so hard, one game could cost you your entire career or your entire future in basketball or in whatever you're working towards. And so it's something so difficult, but I think ultimately, for how hard she has to work, she has to make that difficult decision. And it's just taxing on the other people around her. And even like the character of her mother is kind of that, you know, it's like that housewife. She has these different ideas of what females should be in the household. And Monica doesn't fit that. Monica's something different, and she's striving to go towards what she wants to do. So I like that we have that dynamic between her and her mother, where she doesn't fit the mold. And that's something that they never address until she's well into her adulthood. And that's very difficult to live your life like that, when you feel like you're working so hard towards something and you're doing an incredible job of it, and you're still not respected even by your own mother. It's just very, very difficult. But yeah, I think they handled that very beautifully. And you can see that emotion and that passion that Gina Prince-Bythewood puts into this character.
Yeah, and I think that kind of, when you're mentioning the mother and like the kind of gender expectations that go along with like society, how society doesn't expect women to even like want to play basketball, and when they do, like there's always that kind of pushback. And when we see like the father being like, okay, like, you know, it's cool, because that's seen as a predominantly male dominated thing, so it drives like his interest. But you know, it plays on the adversity of like, even because, you know, probably from the mother's perspective, she's not even thinking about it as someone who's trying to hold her daughter back, or somebody who's not being, you know, forward thinking as a woman. She's thinking of it more of a, probably from the perspective of, you know, there hasn't even been that opportunity opened up yet. Like, what lane is there to take, besides, you know, maybe being a coach for a college team, or maybe going overseas for a little bit before you injure yourself. There wasn't a lot of lanes. So I could see like that level of concern, but at the same time, you know, it's tough. Like, you know, as people moving forward into the next generation, you have to be the person strong enough to overcome those stereotypes and overcome those gender norms and, you know, equality norms overall. So I think, and you see that even a little bit, and I like seeing her journey throughout going to USC. You know, shout out to USC. USC
Yeah.
represented very well here. I'm going to USC and basketball, and having like that like really tough lady coach who's just like drilling her, like making it really tough for her to even get in the starting lineup. I just think it's just, you know, kind of like that. It was a really good dichotomy of showing that, you know, not everybody, you know, has to conform to, like, you know, it's good seeing a female coach, you know, coaching and having that kind of influence, because I think that probably was like a mother figure to her almost. So almost to Monica.
In the moment that we have between the coach and Monica, where she's like, you know, you push on me so hard, like, why are you choosing me for this? And she's like, if I ignore you, that's when you should be worried. And
Right.
it's cool that she gets that push from her, because obviously doing something like this is so difficult, because it's not the norm, and there's not even the right future for anybody like this. So it's super interesting how we have that character.
It's incredibly remarkable how insane. I said it already, but I'll say it again. The mentality that a basketball player has to have. It really is this like, it's like always being thirsty, regardless of how much you have to drink. It's the idea of always perfecting yourself and getting better and never reaching a point to where you're satisfied. It's one of the most frustrating mentally things you can do as an athlete, because usually you want to be like, all right, I'm good, But in basketball, you can't, because the second you think you're good, that's when you miss a shot, or that's when you miss a layup, or anything like that, or that's when your career starts to go down the drain. And it's crazy because this whole movie is kind of a setup into what we're seeing now, which I think is kind of incredible. And you said it, Sabrina, with the WNBA now, how out of every sport, and I really do mean this, and maybe I'll get some pushback off this, but I feel like out of every sport that women play, basketball is the one that has always struggled the most. Where, think about it, 1996, that's when you formed a league. That's incredible. Like, look at how the US dominates the world in soccer. We kill everyone. Women's soccer destroys. Pretty much every girl plays soccer, but there's something, or gymnastics or swimming or other sports like that, where a lot of people get a lot of, like, let's say Monica in this movie was a swimmer or a gymnast, maybe her mom would have been a little bit more receptive. But because it was basketball, the most masculine sport there is, where there's literally no avenue or no lane for you, like RB3 said, you would have to go overseas because that's the only place you can play. It's remarkable. It really is interesting that the character of Quincy kind of has to be the one to swallow the pill at the end of the movie and realize, hey, I'm going to put my career on hold and do other things that I know I can do because I just tore my ACL. And I'm realizing now that out of the two of us, as much as we both love this sport, she's the more talented one. And that's a cool realization that I feel like it's so real. It's really a reality. If you really talk to these WNBA players, a lot of them have husbands who are ex basketball players and ex NBA players, and they don't play anymore. They're just not as good as their wives are. And it's just that kind of counter point of view, as far as instead of basketball wives, it's like basketball husbands, to where they're seeing their wives succeed and dominate the league because they're just badass. I don't know what you think of that angle, Sabrina.
Yeah, what we see with Quincy a lot is, I mean, he's set up, it's exactly what I talked about before. He's set up in life a different way. He already has the influence of his father. He already has, it's easy. Basketball's already run by males. So he kind of has an easier path. Of course, he is talented. And they're both super, super driven. And that's the thing. And his decision to leave school and go to the NBA, he's able to do that. He has that path where he's able to kind of take this different lane. And once he's injured, I think just throughout the film, we see Monica's ambition is just completely unmatched. It's just, no matter what adversity is like she's facing, whether it's her teammates picking on her and her being the freshman, or other things pushing her back, like she still keeps going no matter what. And that's where I find it to be so interesting when we see Quincy, and, at the end, they literally I love the line where it's like, like, I'm playing for your heart. I absolutely love it. They do the thing that connected them in the beginning. They join back up and they do that thing again. And that's where they ultimately kind of, they reconnect with each other after about 5 years of them being disconnected.
At their lowest point too. I think that's what is really special. It's like they both are coming like in open and humble arms, like in vulnerability. And I think they really expressed that well. And I think that's something that's also expressed in like another movie that both Sanaa and Omar Epps was in, and that's The Wood. That was came out like literally the year before, which is directed by Rick Famuyiwa, which we're gonna be talking about next week. So
well, look at that, a connection. Any final thoughts on Love and Basketball, Sabrina?
Overall, I just really enjoyed the way that they focus on this sport that I'm so unfamiliar with, but the way it got me completely hooked to the game and hooked to the idea of, being like driven and motivated to do something, and just all the characters that we have interwoven throughout when we talk about Quincy's mom and his dad, and then Monica's mom, and all of those, not just the romantic relationship that we have, all these like family relationships, and kind of how different things that happen in your life can change your perspective. Quincy the reason why they might have broken up is because what he goes through with his parents, and he was going through something difficult and she wasn't there for him at that time. Life could have been so different if they didn't break up during that time, but they were able to reconnect and find each other again. And I just think the way that we start the film and the way that we end the film, it's this beautiful circle. And I just had chills genuinely when he was sitting there watching her on the sidelines with their little kid. Overall, I thought this was just an incredible movie to watch for this month and just overall. And this really should be a staple classic for anybody who wants to check out a romance film that is so much more. There's so much to kind of latch onto and enjoy with this one.
Yeah, it's definitely so much there, and I really do appreciate this movie. It's one of those movies that we haven't even gotten to the Quincy angle of it all, but the fact that Quincy has to come to terms with what his father had to deal with, and what his father did in the NBA. And that's another thing that I love, that she got that pretty spot on. RB3, I don't know if you have any thoughts of that, but if you've heard any stories in the NBA, it's pretty insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's literally what his dad said in that scene. So it goes to show you, like, how do you deal with not just the on court aspect but off court aspect as well.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, RB3?
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, it's all those themes. I think they were handled very, very well, but I think I highly recommend it. Especially, I know Valentine's Day just passed, but you know, this is a good watch with the lover, or you know, whatever you,
Or by yourself. It's
or
cool.
by yourself too. Yeah, whatever, however you celebrate, you definitely gotta check out Love and Basketball. Highly recommend.
Either way, guys, we're going to be taking a break. After the break, we're going to get into other films such as Beyond the Lights and Yoga. So make sure you guys stick around.
This ain't funny, so don't you dare laugh. With the 4/5 divide you in half. You getting at me equals a bloodbath.
Did you watch Judas and the Black Messiah this weekend? Well, check out RB3's review of the new Fred Hampton movie, available on First Cut. Enjoy. And while I will say the middle might be a little dry, the beginning is really accelerating and the end is powerful and moving and tragic. And while for the most part it does play as a typical biopic, there are elements of like the mystery genre or like the undercover, like detective genre that I played with a little bit here, but it's not in a sympathetic view because, you know, you're really rooting for Fred Hampton. Otherwise, I think it's an incredibly powerful film to watch, especially during Black History Month. And just to see Daniel Kaluuya's portrayal of Fred Hampton is absolutely worth the price of admission. Also, Lakeith Stanfield was great. Dominique Fishback as Fred Hampton's fiance in this movie was phenomenal. Like I said, Jesse Plemons was great. Martin Sheen, and all of the performances all across the board were absolutely great. You know, I haven't really been familiar with director Shaka King's filmography, but I'm excited to look more into that after watching Judas and the Black Messiah. And besides my couple of critiques, I really genuinely think it's one of the better movies I've seen this year. Check out our new website on geeksofcolor.co/first-cut to check out our reviews, our videos, and articles that pertain to everything First Cut related. Check it out.
Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
What is up, guys? We're back talking about Gina Prince-Bythewood. Now let's get to Beyond the Lights. You were telling me off camera, Sabrina, when was the first time you saw this movie?
I saw it right around the time it came out. I rented it off of Redbox, and I have such a vivid memory because of the cover. I thought the poster for the film was so cool because it has her aviators and they're purple. So that stood out to me, obviously, because I was a lot younger. You know, not the film like expert that I am now, not the cinephile. But I just thought this was so incredible. I think this is an underrated movie. I really, really genuinely enjoy it. I feel like we get a lot of what we enjoyed from Love and Basketball in terms of, you know, the idea of ambition and motivation and things like that. But we see it in a completely different sense because we're talking about the music industry and somebody who's working so hard for something that they don't really even want to be doing in that particular way. And the aspects of everything she has to change about herself, everything that Noni has to alter in her life. And I mean, Machine Gun Kelly's in this movie. So, yeah. You know, I
Still not
I
a
always
good
think
actor.
Not a good actor, but I like to see him in movies like this. I enjoy it. So from the performances that we get and Nate Parker as well, I just thought there was a lot of stuff to enjoy with this one.
Yeah. RB3?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one too. I really enjoy like the behind the scenes like spotlight aspect of it. I too rented it when it came out because I was really looking forward to. I just really liked. I heard a lot of great things about it. And Google Mbatha-Raw. I'm sorry, Mbatha-Raw. Excuse me.
Google Mbatha-Raw. Yeah.
Yeah, really talented. Was really bubbling in 2014. So I was like, I gotta check this one out. Yeah. And yeah,
You're going Google for Gugu.
Wait a
Gaga for
minute.
Gugu.
Wait a minute. Oh, there we go. Boom.
There we go.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed.
I was. Just to answer. You didn't
No.
answer my question, but I was.
You were, yeah, amen, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, this one's dope, and I think is interesting because a lot of times when we think about music artists and just artists and entertainers in general, we don't think a lot about like mental health and their struggles and how you kind of just need a break and a vacation and away with it all, you know, before you could kind of come back and reimagine yourself into the spotlight. So I really think it dove really cool into that and really deep into that, you know. And I think the performances between both of them are really cool as well. So I really
it's interesting, right? Because I don't know if you guys have seen Framing Britney Spears yet.
Yeah.
But it's been all over the news. No. And I saw it as soon as it came out because I had to, because I grew up with Britney Spears. I grew up with that whole 90s pop, late 90s, early 2000s pop culture style. You guys, I was way before your time. But for me, that was my generation, Britney Spears. As soon as I remember watching Hit Me Baby One More Time, the music video for the first time when I was a little kid. And I was like, yo, what is this? That's what I said as a kid. But it's one of those things where you don't necessarily... Now we're starting to see the behind the scenes of a pop star more and more and more. And especially when you see the Britney documentary and you see the toll it takes on a mental health aspect of your life, considering when you're that big of a pop star... This movie is essentially all about it, where it talks about the packaging, the product placement, the idea of creating not just a pop star and a singer, but a product that you sell to other people. And part of that is your body, part of that is your image, part of that is your face. Every part of your aspect is being sold as an imaginary product that people can buy just by watching or listening to your song. So it's such a toll on your mental health. And obviously I mentioned Framing Britney Spears because it's so relevant to this movie, considering it deals with that pop star creation kind of attitude. And the more we think about it, the more I feel we're going to get movies like these more and more. I don't know what you think, Sabrina.
Well, I think exactly what you were talking about. Obviously, RB3 and I, we kind of basically in the early 2000s, that's when there was like the rise of tabloid culture.
So you don't count. Yeah.
Well, my mom was this is how I kind of got introduced to all this stuff. Okay. My mom was the biggest like tabloid fan. Everybody was at that time. That was the thing. You get Us Weekly, you get People Magazine, you get all of those. Sure. And the headlines are all these like ridiculous things just about everyone's lives. And it's kind of changed a little bit. We see it in this film. This film is definitely a product of that idea of tabloid culture that we see with celebrities. It's a little bit different now because we do have social media. So a lot of the times they can't get the same scoops or whatever because people are posting it themselves. You don't have to pry into people's lives as much anymore. So it's kind of interesting, that transition that we have. But yeah, I really do love the focus on the character of Noni, especially when we just talked about Love and Basketball, because the same way it opens up with this one, we see her just as a little kid who loves to sing. She enters a talent show and she's just happy to do so. And then we have the idea of her mother. And this time it's the exact opposite. The mom's pushing her past her limits. She's using her for all of this. And we get the backstory. We get the idea of a single young mother who really just wants to survive and wants to give her daughter the life that she never had. But then again, at what cost? At the cost of your daughter's mental health, especially when you're kind of the cause of all of it all. Like when something that was just incredibly haunting was when she was at the photo shoot portion of it. And they're like, oh, take off your jacket. And she was topless. And she looks at her mom and her mom's like, yeah, go for it. And you could just see that she's uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and her mom
Kim
pushes
Kardashian.
her.
Yeah, that's that.
Yeah, that Kris Jenner.
You look great, sweetie. You know.
Yeah. Seriously, that's the exact thing. I got a flashback to Keeping Up with the Kardashians when Kris was taking photos as Kim was doing the Playboy shoot, and she's taking photos of her and like cheering her on. But it really is just interesting to see the kind of mother-daughter relationships that we got in both films and how different this one is. And it's something that is so haunting to see and something that is so real because we came from the time of like Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, all these different celebrities that were pushed by their parents to do something that they didn't want to do 100% to the extent that they were doing. It like took away their childhood, took away a lot of their youth.
And a lot of times it's parents channeling their failed success and their failed visions of, their failed ambitions and channeling that into their kid. A lot of times unwillingly, and that's a lot of what we see in this film as well. So.
Yeah, it definitely is that stage mom kind of attitude that she has throughout the film that is so notorious throughout Hollywood and throughout all of industry of entertainment. And it's devastating to so many people around the world when they're getting to that level. And it's based on talent, right? Where it's like, hey, you're a good singer. You should be a singer. And it's like, cool, but you don't know what comes with that. What comes with that is making you into a product, selling you, packaging you, dressing you up like a doll, all this kind of stuff that
relationships, the like PR relationships.
yeah, the PR relationships, all this stuff that you didn't really ask for when you just wanted to be a singer, an entertainer, someone who's a vocalist. I've known a little bit of the music industry, and the little bit that I've seen, it is the most toxic industry I have ever seen. It puts movies to shame. It is insane how toxic the music industry is. It is completely based upon selling an image and a fact, and it's not necessarily on talent. And I've met vocalists before who are actual vocalists, and it really shows you that these guys are talented, but talent doesn't sell. It's usually more product that sells, so they try to make a product out of you, and that's what they sell instead, because there's millions of people around the world who are incredible singers. How do you package and sell that to an audience that is eager and waiting for it? And usually they're made by companies and these labels that try to make you into what they want you to be. And it's an interesting thing that's been going on for years, and we just kind of ignore it. But now it's kind of getting back into the spotlight, obviously, with what I said before about Britney Spears, but with this movie as well, which came out in 2014. I saw this on Netflix, by the way. And it's interesting because you get to see that other side that's so dark, and it's so different, and it really is a different aspect to that music industry.
Yeah, and even the way that we're introduced to the relationship, it's interesting to see because she's like, "Oh, like, do you see me?" And she's kind of doing this like cry for help as she's about to, jump off the balcony. And even though he doesn't even know her, he's like, "I see you." And even that superficial saying, "I see you," when it's not real because he doesn't really know her yet, she gets a sense and a connection with him. And that's kind of all that she's looking for, because like I said, they have that publicity relationship that she's putting on like different hair extensions and a whole different persona, like hypersexualized version of herself, when at the end of the day, she is that little girl that just wanted to sing. And we get that scene when she's on vacation and she sings Blackbird again. And it's so beautiful to see that kind of story play out, and to see someone who kind of lost their own voice find it again. And obviously we have the relationship being a part of it, but at the core, I really do think this is Noni's story.
Sure, I agree, and I think it's her kind of coming into herself and taking ownership of herself, and not being forced to create a version of herself, which I think is really interesting and cool. And it really is a sign of the times. I really do feel like we're gonna go back and realize how devastating this kind of mentality was, to so many little girls around the world that might have been devastated by this kind of attitude towards them and creating them into an image that they are not. Any final thoughts on Beyond the Lights before we go, RB3?
I just really love a lot about it. I love the Big Sean cameo.
Yeah.
That was present in this. I also just love when
you got to sing the Big Sean song, bro.
No, I'm at home currently. Okay. And also shout out to Bradford Young, one of the I believe the cinematographer on this film, if I'm not mistaken. I have to check on that. But yeah, I really enjoyed Beyond the Lights, and I definitely think it deserves the acclaim of being one of. It didn't receive a lot of Oscar attention. And my apologies, Bradford Young was actually not the cinematographer on it. But I think he was responsible for shooting like the short concept film that was responsible for getting this film funded. So at least that's right around IMDb trivia. So take that for what it's worth.
Talk to me a little bit about Gina Prince's other work before we get to The Old Guard.
Yeah, I mean, Secret Life of Bees is definitely something I watched as a kid. And she doesn't have a lot of movies. And, if you listen to what she talks about, I mean, it's just think of how hard it is for a Black woman to get a film made in this world, in this reality. It's just tough. But Secret Life of Bees is something I remember based on a best-selling like hit like novel or whatever. It really deals with like that like Southern like family, like dealing with femininity and being women in the 1964. It's also dealing with like interracial, like dealing with race too, being Black women in the South, independent women in the South, in this small town in South Carolina, and dealing with the past trauma. And it definitely deals with the idea of like generational trauma and like how that's passed on from one generation to another. So it's really, really good. I also want to shout out the TV work. Salute to that episode of Everybody Hates Chris, Everybody Hates the Laundromat. I literally just watched that episode. Me and my mom have been trying to, we watched Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when the quarantine first started, and we really enjoyed that one. And we finished it right when the reunion special had aired. So literally last episode finished, and then we had the reunion special right after that. So it really wasn't a better show to like kind of like binge after that. We tried everything. Like we tried Martin, we even tried Blackish, like even though that's still on TV. But we also tried Everybody Hates Chris, and this is like one of the funniest episodes. Like it's literally Chris at a laundromat. He's arguing with his sister because his sister is like acting crazy. They're running out of quarters, and then he mixes up the laundry and pinks with the whites. It's really funny stuff. Also, shout out to that episode, the Bernie Mac show, the Magic Jordan episode where they were playing basketball, learning how to play not basketball, learning some magic tricks. And it's really fun. It's a really funny episode. And also shout out to Shots Fired. I actually worked the premiere like of the episode. Actually got to they had like a private like press screening, or I guess it wasn't even a press screening. It was just like other celebrities. Like I met Safari at that screening, if I'm not mistaken. And I was just working there just as hands on deck for a PR company. And actually, got to see Gina there. Got to see Sanaa there. She's the star of that show. And it's a really cool cop show. It's 2017. I don't really know about, cop shows, today, but it was good seeing like a Black woman, leading that detective show during that time. So short-lived show, but I think it's worth checking out.
That's so cool, man. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Let's quickly go to the Old Guard. We made a whole video on this, so if you want to check it out, obviously go to our channel and search the Old Guard review. But just let's talk about a kind of bigger concept, the idea of going from Beyond the Lights and Love and Basketball to a major budget blockbuster film that is the Old Guard. How did you feel about her stepping up in that way, Sabrina?
I thought it was really great because obviously, like RB3 said, she doesn't have a huge expansive filmography, and we can just see she's clearly capable with the talent on all different levels when it comes to the heart, when it comes to the story. So it's just cool for her to take that step into like a comic book film, focusing on different superheroes, focusing on all different characters. And I just, it really is something special when you do have a talent like Gina Prince-Bythewood behind something like this, because we have a woman that we have Charlize Theron as the main character, and she's kicking ass, and we never get to see something like that. It's just really interesting. And then also we have the gay relationship, but it's not one of those situations where it's like, oh, blink and you'll miss it. You see two people kissing in the background, or you see somebody mention going on a date with their partner. It's nothing like that where it's a pat on the back. This was just a beautiful display of love that we saw with the characters of Joe and Nikki. And then we also have Kiki Lane and her character and everything, like her entire backstory coming into this role. So we have so many different special elements that come into this story and this film in general. So having somebody with the talent of Gina Prince-Bythewood, I just think is really special, and it shows that she's capable of doing this and just like hitting it out of the park.
Yeah. What do you think, RB3, of the step up in budget?
Well, yeah, I think it's well deserved. I mean, I've mentioned it before plenty of times on this show, but she was initially signed on to do the Silver and Black. Yeah, film for Sony under the Spider-Man universe. She was initially signed on to do that. She also directed an episode of Cloak and Dagger. So she had taken steps and stepping up into that big budget realm. But frankly, that's really the only direction to go in to, like, as a filmmaker these days, right? It's either you go back to the super indie route or you go to the mega blockbusters. There's not really a lot of in between. So, you know, but the fact that you can tell a story on a $20 million budget or on a $10 million budget means they could tell a story on a $200 million budget. It's just more resources and more things, but you still ultimately could still have that same heart and character and charisma. And I think we saw that all throughout the old guard, like through and through.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you mentioned it, Sabrina, where we see a relationship in the movie. Even we don't see a lot of it, but the scenes that we do see, we're convinced, which is kind of one of those things where that kind of goes back to her work in Love and Basketball and Beyond the Lights. She knows how to do romance, and they were like, "Hey, give us a 2-minute monologue. That's all we need," and she nailed it.
Yeah, it's really great. And that's the same thing as that. I love when we have characters, part of the LGBTQ community, when it doesn't just like take us out of the film, when they don't like go leaps and bounds to show us that they're just in this, and that's just part of the story, that they love each other, and we get those brief moments and we get this beautiful monologue, and it's not patting themselves on the back, it's not doing any of that, it's just serving the story, and it's just a beautiful display of romance, and it's just so normalized. I think that's what makes that special, is how normalized something like that is in this film.
Yeah, I really like the way she does that, and I think she'll nail that when it comes to future projects, if it's big budget or not. I also want to give a shout out to her action scenes. She talked about making the action as raw and as real as possible because, and she also mentioned because of her background in athletics, how that kind of helped her to really focus up and make it a little bit more natural and a little bit more raw. And I think that works so well because I'm a big nerd and I'm a big martial arts nerd. And I'm a nerd who likes really like crazy lore about vampires. And one of the crazy things about vampires is that, I mean, it's vampires. You can also trace it back to comics, but it's the idea of like, if I have more time on this planet to perfect my sport, to perfect my martial arts, I'm going to be the greatest martial artist ever, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, if martial art is a muscle that you practice every day and you get better every day, imagine having hundreds of years to practice it. And I love how this movie kind of deals with that when it comes to Charlize Theron's character, who is just unbeatable in every single aspect of it. And she can take down armies, not because she has like super strength or can fly, but because she perfected her martial arts ability through those hundreds of years. It's that concept of like growing that muscle every time and having 1,000 years to do it, which I think is so cool. And I've always been a fan of that. I mean, Ra's al Ghul is the best example, or Ra's al Ghul in Batman, but it's also in vampires, as far as like, if you practice something enough and then you have hundreds of years to practice it, you get so good at it. And I love how they show that in this movie, and it's my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, and even just upon that, like that mythology around it, the mythology around these people and the lives that they've lived and the stories that they have and how they continue to do so, and they live under the radar and help so many other people out, prevent disasters, prevent genocide, like different things like that. It's very, very interesting. Also, the idea of I mean, the way we left off, it's open for a sequel. I'm wondering if Gina Prince-Bythewood's going to come back for that one. I'd hope so.
Have we heard? I think we've heard that aren't they planning to make a sequel?
Well, I mean, with the way they left off, it kind of seems like they have to almost. If as long as they do, though, like I do think that they have a really great foundation with this film. This film works on its own in that way, but they have so much that they can do with these characters and with this world that they built.
Yeah, I think the sky's the limit, and it's one of those things where Netflix is backing you. You have the opportunity to just go balls out, go all the way. Yeah, I'm so excited to see what the future projects hold for Gina Prince-Bythewood. We're obviously all big fans of her, whether it be a small budget, whether it be about basketball or about being a pop star or about being an immortal, crazy killing machine. We love what she brings to the table. And that's our episode on Gina Prince-Bythewood. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me. Where can everyone find you, Sabrina?
You guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Sabrina X Monica, and then also on Twitter at Sabrina on Film.
RB3.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Director RB3.
You can find me at Squad Leader Race, and obviously join us here for more content, for more movie reviews. You can check check out our review of The Old Guard when we just saw the movies just coming after it, so you can get our initial reaction there. It's up on our channel First Cut. Go ahead, RD3.
And be sure to check us out on Patreon. And if you're at the $20 plus tier, if you're at the sound editor tier, that's right, the sound editor tier. Yeah, if you're at that tier, you can get our exclusive live stream. We have spilled the tea. We've spilled all of it.
Yeah.
So make sure you come in and watch it and watch our live stream. And if you pay $20 a month.
Yeah, look at that. Either way, guys, for the First Cut crew,